The courtroom was unusually full that morning in Monroe, Louisiana. Not because of who was on trial, but because of who he was outside of it. People weren't used to seeing Elias Walker in this kind of light. He wasn't a criminal. He was the man who cleaned up broken glass on the sidewalk before the school bus arrived. The man who offered his porch fan to a neighbor during a blackout. The black veteran in the wheelchair who never asked for anything and never said a harsh word. But now, here he was, seated at the defense table, facing Judge Noreen Callister, known for her precision, her lack of tolerance for theatrics, and a face that could freeze boiling water. Elias looked straight ahead, expression neutral, jaw steady, hands folded tightly in his lap. 3 rows back, his 14-year-old nephew, Javen, sat sandwiched between a youth pastor and his school principal. He clutched his backpack like it might protect him from the weight of what was about to unfold. The man Elias had struck, Lucas Brenning, brother of a city official, sat on the other side of the room, arms crossed, eyes burning holes in the floor. A camera crew from a local news station in Shreveport had set up shop in the back corner, their red recording light glowing quietly. They weren't there for drama. They were there because they'd heard whispers. Something was going to happen. Judge Callister flipped through the sentencing folder like she was slicing through fabric. She didn't look at anyone. Just paper. Page after page. And then she lifted her eyes. "Mr. Walker," she said clearly, "please rise." A hush fell over the room. At first, people assumed she had misspoken. Elias was paralyzed from the waist down. Everyone knew that. His public defender, Darren Pike, leaned in, confused. "Your Honor," he said into the mic, "Mr. Walker is a paraplegic. He's not physically able to." But Judge Callister didn't even blink. Her eyes remained fixed on Elias. And Elias. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He just placed his palms flat on the armrests of his chair. And then he pushed. A sound escaped the quiet. Just the creak of steel as his chair shifted under the force. His arms trembled. His chest shook. And inch by inch, he began to lift himself. People gasped. Silently. Eyes widened. A few hands instinctively clutched chests. He didn't get all the way up. But he rose. Just enough to be undeniable. Then his legs gave way, and he fell hard back into the chair. Still, he didn't cry out. He didn't make a sound. He simply sat there breathing, sweat beading on his forehead, his lips tight but composed. And the silence that followed, it was heavier than judgment. Judge Callister's face twitched. Her mouth tightened. She stood up abruptly, took off her robe, and walked out of the courtroom. Nobody moved. Not the bailiff. Not the attorneys. Not the camera crew. For nearly 2 minutes, there was nothing but the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant chirp of someone's phone vibrating in a coat pocket. When she returned, she looked softer, a little undone. Her voice, when it came, was smaller. "I am calling a recess," she said. 15 minutes. Then she left again. People turned to one another in disbelief. One woman near the back whispered, "What in God's name just happened?" Javen reached forward, touched his uncle's shoulder gently, and said something only Elias could hear. For the first time that morning, Elias smiled. But no one there would forget what they just saw, because it wasn't about physical strength. It was about being seen. And what led up to that moment, what Elias had done, and why, was a story the court hadn't heard yet. But they were about to. 2 weeks before the courtroom incident, Elias Walker was rolling down Jackson Avenue, the small-town strip where Monroe's local shops met the church and the post office. He had just picked up groceries, a modest bag of oats, 2 cans of beans, and a pack of batteries for the flashlight Javen always forgot to turn off at night. That Saturday morning sun had teeth, but Elias didn't mind. It felt good on his face. The wheelchair squeaked faintly with every push, but he was used to that too. What he wasn't used to was the sound of his nephew crying. It came sharp, from the alley behind Carter's Cleaners. Elias froze, listened, then heard it again. A muffled shout. Something thudding. He turned his chair and wheeled faster than he thought he could. Groceries bouncing in his lap. And what he saw when he got there. It took all the oxygen out of him. Javen, his 14-year-old nephew, was on the ground, backpack torn, his cheeks smeared with blood and dirt. Towering above him were two teenage boys, both taller, both smirking. One was gripping Javen by the collar. The other held a broken lacrosse stick like a weapon. "Say it again," one of them was hissing. "Tell me you're sorry for touching my sister's racket." Javen whimpered. "I didn't touch anything. She dropped it." A kick to the ribs cut him off. Elias didn't think, didn't hesitate. He launched his chair forward, the front wheels catching on the crack in the concrete, but his momentum was too strong to stop. The one with the lacrosse stick turned just as Elias reached him. With a single swing of his calloused arm, Elias knocked the boy off his feet. The stick clattered across the alley. The other kid let go of Javen and backed up, stammering. "You lay another finger on him," Elias growled. "And I swear, wheelchair or not, I will make sure you never forget the name Walker." The boys didn't know what to do. They'd never been challenged. Not like this. Especially not by someone they assumed couldn't stand, let alone fight. "Why, you're crazy," one spat. "You're gonna get arrested." "Then go get the cops," Elias said, without blinking. "But before you do, pick up your pride and my nephew's books." The boys fled, muttering threats about their dad being someone important. Elias exhaled slowly, then wheeled over to Javen and helped him sit up. The boy was shaken, crying quietly. "I didn't do anything," Javen whispered, his voice cracking. "She dropped the racket, Uncle Eli. I was just trying to give it back." Elias nodded, brushing the dirt from his shirt. "I know, son. I know you didn't." Then came the sound of sirens. Fast. Too fast. Someone had already called them. And when the patrol car screeched to a stop, and Officer Thad Ryerson stepped out, Elias' stomach sank. Ryerson wasn't just a cop. He was Lucas Brenning's best friend, the same Lucas whose brother had made a name climbing City Hall steps on the backs of people like Elias. "What's going on here?" Ryerson barked, hand already on his holster. "I stopped a beating," Elias said plainly. "Two boys jumped my nephew." Javen nodded, still trembling. But Ryerson wasn't listening. He'd already gotten a text. Already heard a version of the story. "Where's the other kid's stick?" Ryerson asked. Elias gestured to the alley floor. Ryerson squinted, then reached down and picked up the lacrosse stick, the cracked handle still slightly curved. "You hit a minor with this?" Ryerson asked. Elias stared at him. "I hit the one who was hitting my nephew." Ryerson clicked his tongue. "Well, that's gonna be a problem." And right there, on that hot alley floor, surrounded by spilled oats and crushed tomatoes, Elias Walker was handcuffed. A war veteran. A father figure. A protector. Javen screamed. "Uncle Eli didn't do anything." But Ryerson shoved Elias into the back seat of the cruiser like he was hauling trash. As they pulled away, Elias didn't say a word. He didn't cry. He didn't argue. But as the cuffs bit into his wrists and the cruiser rolled past the rusted gates of Monroe's courthouse, he made a decision. He wasn't going to beg. He wasn't going to play nice with men who'd spent their lives pretending men like him didn't exist. If they wanted him to stand in court, then he'd show them what it meant to stand, on his own terms. The county jail in Monroe, Georgia, was nothing like the combat zones Elias had seen. But that night, sitting alone in a cell that reeked of mold and cold concrete, he felt something he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. Isolation that screamed. The steel bench dug into his back, and every few minutes, the flickering fluorescent light buzzed like a fly that wouldn't die. Elias had been silent for hours, even when the young officer brought him a paper cup of lukewarm water and muttered, "Sorry, Mr. Walker, orders from above." Elias just stared. He wasn't mad at the boy. He was mad at the game. Because he already knew how this would play out, if he didn't fight smart. At that moment, down the road, Councilman Lucas Brenning was sitting in a leather chair, sipping whiskey at the Monroe Country Club. His son, Chase Brenning, and his friend Trip Darrow, the ones who'd attacked Javen, had already twisted the story. Man attacked us with a stick, they claimed. Some lunatic vet with PTSD went wild in the alley. Lucas didn't question it. He'd been waiting for a way to bring Elias down. He's dangerous, Lucas said to the sheriff over the phone that night. He's got military training, unstable history, and a chip on his shoulder. I want charges filed first thing. But what he didn't know was that someone had been watching. Someone with power and a memory. The next morning, Elias sat quietly in the courtroom holding cell, hands clasped. He hadn't spoken to anyone but his public defender, Lisa Cargill, a young black woman barely 30 but already hardened by Monroe's crooked courtrooms. Lisa had fire in her. "You shouldn't even be here," she snapped, pacing in heels too tight for the worn tile floor. "The boys attacked your nephew, and now they want to charge you with aggravated assault?" Elias didn't flinch. "It's not the charges they want. It's the headline." Lisa paused. He was right. If they could paint Elias, a respected war vet, a local role model, as an unstable black man, they could remind everyone in Monroe exactly who controlled the town's narrative. But what Lisa didn't know, what Judge Penelope Cartwright didn't know, what Lucas Brenning and Sheriff Dale didn't know, was that a phone call had already gone out that morning. To Washington, D.C. 3 hours before court began, a black government SUV parked discreetly on Oak Street, across from the courthouse. Out stepped a tall woman in a beige trench coat, mid-50s, silver streaks in her hair. Her name was Marla Jefferson, Special Assistant to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And she wasn't there to watch. She was there to warn. She entered the courtroom just before 10 a.m., unnoticed by most. But Judge Cartwright saw her and froze. Because Marla Jefferson used to sit on the Federal Ethics Board, and her presence in a Monroe courtroom, it meant someone upstairs was paying attention. Elias was wheeled into the courtroom minutes later, flanked by 2 officers. Javen sat behind the railing, his cheeks still bruised. He looked at Elias with wide, scared eyes. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Then Judge Cartwright looked up. "Mr. Walker," she said, her voice clipped, "you've been charged with second-degree assault against 2 minors. Do you understand the charges?" Elias didn't blink. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded. "Do you have anything to say before bail is set?" Lisa opened her mouth to object, but Elias raised his hand gently. Then he spoke, loud enough for the gallery to hear. "Come, low. Your Honor, I've served this country in war zones where bombs didn't care what color you were. I've lost men, limbs, and memories I can't get back. But I've never once raised my hand in hate. That day, I did what any uncle would do. I protected my family." The room was dead silent. Judge Cartwright stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then a voice from the back said, "Amen." It was Pastor Jim, from the Monroe Baptist Church. Then came another voice. Then a few more. "I saw what happened." An older black woman stood up. "Those boys were hitting that child." "That vet's a hero," someone else muttered. Chaos brewed. Judge Cartwright banged her gavel. "Order." But the spell had broken. The town had heard the lie, and now they wanted truth. Cartwright glanced toward Marla Jefferson, who gave a faint, knowing nod. And just like that, everything shifted. But not for Lucas Brenning, who stepped into the courtroom 30 seconds later, unaware his whole plan was about to unravel. Elias turned slightly, locking eyes with the councilman. And for the first time, Lucas didn't smirk. He hesitated, because sitting in the front row, beside Marla Jefferson, was a man in uniform, a decorated general, and Elias's old commanding officer. And behind him, Councilman Lucas Brenning hadn't planned for this. The courtroom that he expected to control was now slipping through his fingers. The moment his eyes met Elias Walker's, Lucas knew the narrative was changing. He could feel it in the murmurs, in the silence, in the cameras pointed straight at him. He spotted Marla Jefferson, seated front row, and worse, General Noah Briggs, decorated war hero and Elias's former commanding officer, seated beside her. His very presence, wearing his medals, spoke volumes. This was no longer a small-town case. This was about integrity. Lucas clenched his jaw and whispered to Sheriff Dale, "What the hell is happening?" But the sheriff just looked away. Even he was starting to sweat. Judge Penelope Cartwright cleared her throat. "We are not here to entertain rumors or emotional appeals," she said sternly, her gavel ready. "Unless you have new evidence, Counselor, we will proceed to set bail." "Your Honor," Lisa Cargill interrupted, her voice steady but fierce. "We have a security video." The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. Lisa turned to the court officer. "Permission to submit this into evidence immediately." "What video?" Lucas snapped. "What?" But it was too late. The officer inserted a USB stick into the courtroom monitor. The lights dimmed slightly, and then the screen flickered to life. It began in an alley, time-stamped 7:12 p.m., just behind Jasper's Ice Cream. Javon was walking with his backpack, alone, looking down at his phone. Then Chase Brenning and Trip Darrow entered the frame. They didn't see the camera hidden on the loading dock overhead. They shoved Javon, took his phone. One pushed him to the ground. Javon yelled. Then came Elias. He didn't lunge. He didn't attack. He stepped in between, arms out, calm. But Chase took a swing first. And only then did Elias react, blocking the blow, grabbing Trip's wrist as he reached for something in his waistband. They scuffled, but there was no attack. It was restraint, de-escalation, discipline. The whole courtroom gasped. Even Judge Cartwright leaned forward. Lucas sank back in his seat. His face turned stone white. When the video ended, the silence was thicker than before. Lisa looked at the judge. "Your Honor, this footage clearly shows my client acted not just in self-defense, but to protect a minor from an unprovoked assault." "And the claim that he threatened the boys?" Lisa turned to the crowd. "Where? Show me the threat. Because what I see is a man trying to do what any decent person would have done." The judge didn't speak at first. Then she looked at Elias. "I see it too," she said. Just as everyone exhaled, the door burst open. A young journalist from the Monroe Herald stepped in, laptop in hand, waving to the bailiff. "Your Honor, I'm sorry, but there's something else." Judge Cartwright's face tightened. "This is highly irregular. This article was scheduled to publish next week," he said breathlessly. "But you need to see this now. It's about Councilman Brenning." Lucas stood sharply. "That's slander. I will not." But the journalist read aloud. Councilman Lucas Brenning's name appears in over 7 sealed housing discrimination complaints dating back 6 years. Each filed by black families denied housing in Monroe's North District, all turned away by properties under Brenning's personal real estate trust. The man calling Elias Walker a threat has profited for years off of keeping families like Elias's out of certain zip codes. Gasps erupted. A woman in the gallery shouted, "I tried to rent on Lincoln Street. They said it was unavailable. Then put a white family there the next week." Another stood. "Same with me." Lucas stormed toward the judge's bench. "This is outrageous." But Judge Cartwright slammed her gavel. "Enough." She turned to Elias. "Mr. Walker, this court apologizes. You never should have been here today." Elias's face was unreadable, but his eyes said everything. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Reporters, supporters, even strangers who'd seen the video shared online. Javon ran into Elias's arms, finally able to exhale. "You okay?" Elias whispered. Javon nodded. "Better now." Lisa walked up beside them. "The charges are dropped. We're filing suit tomorrow. False arrest, defamation, everything." But Elias shook his head. "Not for money," he said. "For truth." Lisa smiled. "Then we'll make sure the whole state hears it." But just as the family began to walk down the courthouse steps, a black car pulled up, tinted windows, quiet engine. The driver stepped out, military uniform. "Mr. Walker," he said, "General Briggs would like a word." Privately. Lisa blinked. "Now." The man nodded, and Elias's past, his real past, was about to walk out of the shadows. The engine purred as Elias slid into the back seat of the black car. The doors locked with a quiet click behind him. Across from him sat General Noah Briggs, still in full uniform. But this wasn't a reunion. It was a mission briefing. The general's eyes, usually calm, were intense. "You weren't supposed to be dragged into this, Elias," he said without greeting. Elias leaned forward, arms on his knees. "Dragged into what, sir?" Briggs handed him a slim black folder. No name on the front, no markings. "Just wait. This is what they didn't want you to remember. What you're not even supposed to know you did." Elias opened it slowly. Inside were declassified mission logs, drone surveillance images, and a classified report labeled Operation Iron Wolf, Mali, 2016. Elias froze. He had flashes of that year. Night raids, children in crossfire, corrupt liaisons posing as peacekeepers. But this file, this confirmed it. "I was part of Iron Wolf," he asked. "You led it," the general said. "And what you discovered over there, it rattled the wrong people." Page after page, Elias read through documentation showing a ring of international arms traffickers operating under the guise of a humanitarian contract. The mission was supposed to expose them. Elias had sent reports, evidence, testimonies from locals. But then, the unit was disbanded, the mission classified, and his entire deployment record for that year erased. "They sealed it and labeled you unstable," General Briggs said. "Called it PTSD and pulled your security clearance." Elias's mouth was dry. "They buried it. Buried me." "And who do you think signed off on the blackout?" the general asked, eyes narrowing. "Lucas Brenning's brother, Senator Paul Brenning." Elias sat back, stunned. "They're not just racists in suits," Briggs added. "They're cleaning house before a new bill is passed next month. One that would force transparency in military contract audits. Your voice, your history, is a threat to that bill dying quietly." Elias clenched his fists. "You've got two options," Briggs said. "Walk away, stay safe, or stand up and expose the Brenning family's role in blacklisting soldiers and burying war crimes." Lisa was pacing when Elias returned. She spun around. "Where the hell were you?" "That car. No one knew who took you." But when he placed the folder on the kitchen table, she stopped. She flipped it open, eyes scanning. "What is this?" "The reason they came after me." Javen peeked around the corner. "Mom, is Dad in trouble again?" Lisa smiled softly. "No, baby. This time. I think he's gonna save more than just himself." The next morning, boom. The front page of the Monroe Herald exploded with the headline, "Veterans' Hidden Mission, Brenning Tied to Military Cover-Up." Within hours, social media lit up. Hashtag Justice for Elias trended. Journalists camped outside the Brenning estate. Activists marched to City Hall. Councilman Lucas Brenning tried to go on TV, but every network pulled the plug. And then, the Pentagon issued a formal statement. "Following new evidence, we are reopening investigations into Operation Iron Wolf and whistleblower treatment of veterans previously diagnosed with PTSD." But then, a twist. Just as Elias and Lisa began to breathe, a rock smashed through their front window. A note attached read, "Stay quiet, or your son's next." Javen screamed. Lisa grabbed him. Elias ran to the porch, but the street was empty. Elias stared into the distance, his chest tight. "This isn't over," he muttered. "No," Lisa said. "It's just begun." The police came and went. They took the shattered glass, the threatening note, even dusted for fingerprints. But they left without answers. No witnesses, no cameras, no suspects, just fear. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He stood by the window with a baseball bat in hand, staring out at every passing car like it was a target. Lisa slept in Javon's room, door locked, chair under the knob. They were under siege. Not in a war zone. At home. And then, Javon didn't come home. Tuesday, 3:12 p.m. Lisa stood by the front door, phone in hand. The school bus was late. No call. No message. She redialed for the third time. "Hi, this is Javon Briggs' mother. He hasn't come home yet. Did the bus leave on time today?" There was a pause on the other end. Then, "Ma'am, Javon wasn't in school today." Lisa's blood turned cold. She dropped the phone, screamed, "Elias!" He came running. She grabbed him by the shirt. "He's gone. Javon's missing." At 4:19 p.m., the house phone rang. An unknown number. Elias answered. A voice, filtered and calm, spoke. "You should have stayed quiet." Then silence. Click. He slammed the receiver down. Lisa stared at him. What did they say? Elias didn't speak. He just grabbed his coat, opened the gun safe, and loaded a pistol he hadn't touched in 5 years. "I'm going to get my son." That evening, Lisa noticed something. An old business card, tucked between the pages of the folder General Briggs had given Elias. It was from a private security firm, one tied to Senator Paul Brenning's campaign donations. The name on the back. Pine Hollow Training Grounds, outside Eastwood. Lisa looked it up. A secluded training compound 30 miles out of town. Remote. Off-grid. No official ownership. And the same logo matched a patch she once saw on a man at the courtroom. Elias didn't wait. He kissed Lisa hard. "If I'm not back by sunrise, go public. With everything." Lisa nodded, holding back tears. "Bring him home." Elias drove without headlights down a back road, the night pressing in like judgment. At the edge of Pine Hollow, he parked and continued on foot. A faint light flickered in the distance, an old warehouse. Inside, he found them. 2 armed guards, a desk, and Javon, hands tied, gagged, sitting in a chair. His eyes widened when he saw his father. "Dad." The guards turned, but it was too late. Elias moved like the soldier he used to be. One swift blow. 2 men down. Javon in his arms. But just as they reached the door, freeze. 10 red dots glowed across his chest. From the shadows stepped a man in a gray suit, hands folded. Senator Paul Brenning. "Well, well," he said. The soldier rises. "Shame it's all for nothing." Elias raised his hands, shielding Javon. "You kidnapped a child." "My child." Paul laughed. "Please. You were warned. You went public. Now you'll disappear. Again." Suddenly, a voice over loudspeakers. "Drop your weapons. Federal raid in progress." Spotlights. Helicopters. Agents in tactical gear burst in through the warehouse walls. Brenning's men dropped their rifles. Within seconds, the senator was on the ground, screaming, handcuffed. And behind the agents, General Briggs. He walked in, slow and steady, eyes on Elias. "Told you we weren't done." 1 month later, Elias Briggs stood in the same courtroom where he was once humiliated. Only this time, he wore a suit. The room was packed. Reporters, veterans, politicians. He stepped to the microphone. "I stand not as a victim, but as a warning. You cannot break a man who's already rebuilt himself. You cannot silence the truth by threatening his child. You can't erase service. And you damn sure can't bury justice." The courtroom rose in applause. Even the judge wiped a tear. Outside, Lisa and Javon waited, arms open. And as Elias walked out of the building, This time standing tall, it wasn't just a victory. It was a homecoming, life lesson. No matter how deep they try to bury you, truth, love, and purpose will always rise. Sometimes, it just takes one stand to remind the world who you really are.